He bribed his way out of 2 maximum security prisons. He paid off presidents, generals, and the very officers sent to arrest him. For decades, he moved billions of dollars in drugs across borders while entire governments pretended not to see. And then he sat down in an American courtroom and found out that money couldn't buy everything. This is the story of Joaquin Guzman Lora, a man born with nothing in the mountains of Sinaloa, Mexico, who built one of the most powerful criminal empires the world has ever seen, and how one federal judge, in a Brooklyn courtroom, ended it all without flinching. Badiraguato is a dusty, remote town buried in the Sierra Madre Mountains, the kind of place where the only real industry was growing and smuggling drugs, and where poverty wasn't a circumstance, it was a destiny. Joaquin Guzman was born there in the mid-1950s, the eldest of several children, raised by an abusive father who worked in the region's drug trade. There was no school to dream about, no future to plan for. By the time he was 15 years old, he had his own marijuana plantation. He was short and stocky, built like someone who had worked the land his whole life, and his peers gave him a nickname that would one day be feared across 5 continents: El Chapo, the shorty. But what El Chapo lacked in height, he made up for in ruthlessness. By the late 1970s, he was working for one of Mexico's most powerful drug lords, overseeing the movement of narcotics through the Sinaloa region toward the U.S. border. The stories about him were always the same. He was efficient, precise, and completely without mercy. If a smuggler was late with a delivery, El Chapo shot him in the head. No warnings, no second chances. By the early 1980s, he had moved up to the Guadalajara cartel, one of Mexico's biggest criminal organizations at the time. And when that cartel collapsed in the late 1980s, El Chapo didn't fall with it. He built his own. The Sinaloa cartel was founded in 1989, and over the next 3 decades it expanded to operations in nearly 50 countries across 5 continents. Tunnels were dug under the U.S.-Mexico border, air-conditioned tunnels, some of them. Drugs were hidden in fire extinguishers, in chili pepper cans, catapulted over border walls. But the most powerful weapon El Chapo had was not a tunnel or a smuggling technique. It was money, and the willingness to put that money in the right hands. Because here is what made El Chapo truly untouchable, and you need to understand this before we get to that courtroom. He didn't just bribe low-level guards. He bribed entire systems. Mexico's federal police chief, Genaro Garcia Luna, the man the United States publicly called an ally in the war on drugs, was secretly pocketing millions from the Sinaloa cartel. Cash stuffed into suitcases and duffel bags, handed off at a car wash and at a French restaurant sitting directly across the street from the U.S. Embassy. Garcia Luna was eventually convicted in a U.S. court and sentenced to nearly 40 years in prison. And he was just one name on a very long list. When El Chapo was first arrested in 1993 and thrown into a Mexican maximum security prison, people assumed it was over. They were completely wrong. He kept running the entire cartel from behind bars, using bribes and threats to maintain total control. Then on January 19, 2001, he simply walked out. Some accounts say he was hidden in a laundry cart. Others say he walked straight out the front gates in a guard's uniform, because he had paid so many people that nobody dared stop him. Either way, dozens of prison officials were implicated in helping him disappear. He was free for 13 years. When he was caught again in 2014 and placed in Mexico's most fortified prison with the whole world watching, he escaped again. This time through a 1.5-kilometer tunnel dug directly into the floor of his shower cell. His own wife, Emma Coronel, allegedly helped coordinate the entire operation from outside. A $2 million bribe was reportedly paid to the chief of Mexico's prison system. He was gone for 6 months before Mexican Marines caught up to him in January 2016. And this time, there would be no more Mexican prisons. In January 2017, El Chapo was extradited to the United States. He would stand trial in Brooklyn, New York, before a judge his money could not reach, in a system his bribes could not penetrate. And what came out in that courtroom over 3 months was staggering. More than 50 witnesses testified. A former close associate named Alex Cifuentes took the stand and told the jury that El Chapo had paid a $100 million bribe directly to the president of Mexico, President Enrique Peña Nieto, in October 2012. According to Cifuentes, Peña Nieto had actually reached out first, initially requesting $250 million. The allegation shook the world. Peña Nieto denied everything. But the testimony was already in the record, and the jury was already listening. On February 12, 2019, after 3 months of testimony, the verdict came back on all 10 counts. Guilty. Every single one. And on July 17, 2019, Joaquin Guzman Lora stood before U.S. District Judge Brian Cogan, the man who had presided over every moment of that trial with precision and complete fairness. The man who could not be bought. The man who did not blink. Judge Cogan sentenced El Chapo to life in prison, plus 30 additional years to run consecutive to the life sentence. He also ordered El Chapo to forfeit $12.6 billion. The same courtroom that had heard testimony about presidents accepting bribes now watched the man who paid those bribes sit in silence as everything was taken from him permanently. El Chapo is currently held at ADX Florence, America's only federal supermax prison, buried in the mountains of Colorado. The man who walked out of 2 Mexican prisons cannot walk out of this one. His sons now run what remains of the Sinaloa cartel. The empire staggers on. But its founder, the boy from the mountains who believed money could buy absolutely anything, finally met the one thing it couldn't: justice.